Who is Richard Marles? Richard Marles is a prominent Australian politician. He is currently serving as the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia and the Minister for Defence in the federal government, positions he has held since May to June 2022 under Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Before entering Parliament, Marles was a lawyer and union official, working with the Transport Workers Union and the Australian Council of Trade Unions. In government, he has held several roles, including Minister for Trade in 2013 during the Rudd government, and various shadow minister positions while in opposition. As Defence Minister, he oversees Australia's defence policy, which is in tatters. We've got no defence in Australia. We're defenceless. Military operations, strategic planning, and international defence engagements. Let's see what the intelligence of Richard Marles is relative to Islamic Jihad, and how, as the Defence Minister, he thinks, thank you, Tammy, he is going to protect Australians.
Investigation in just a moment, but joining us live now is the Deputy Prime Minister and the Defence Minister, Richard Marles. Richard, thank you so much for your time this morning under the most trying of circumstances. If a government's primary job...
Okay, let me say from the start, the man is deflated, he looks defeated.
First job is to protect its citizens. Have you failed the Jewish community?
Well, certainly, I understand that people within the Jewish community, but actually people across Australia, will have a sense that what occurred on Sunday night is shattering to people's sense of security. And I also understand that for people in the Jewish community...
Now, the question was, are you responsible for what happened in the Bondi massacre? Now, he says he understands how people feel, but he's not going to admit that they were responsible.
For a long time, they've not felt secure. And it is really important that we are doing everything within our power to stamp out the scourge of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism...
So there's someone abusing him in the background. They know that these people encouraged the protests. They didn't do anything to stop any of this radicalisation in Australia.
Is at the heart of this, and it's really important that we're doing everything in our power to stamp it out.
Did you fail them?
Well, we have been calling out anti-Semitism. Obviously, we commissioned the Siegel report, and we are busy...
So they commissioned Julia Siegel did a report on how the Australian government can help the Jews, and they've done nothing with it for the last 6 months. Are you responsible for this atrocity? The answer is, in simple yes-no terms, is yes, but the government's not accountable for anything at the moment.
Implementing it, we have criminalised more forms of hate speech than have ever happened before. We've criminalised the Nazi salute, doxing. We're working with our universities to make them safer for Jewish students. But not for a moment would I suggest that the work is complete. This is not something which is done in the course of a day or a week or a month. This is a long-term project where we need to be ensuring that the Jewish community feels safe, that every Australian feels safe, and that we stamp out the scourge of anti-Semitism in this country, and we are utterly committed to doing that.
Well, all of a sudden they are. For the last 2 years plus, this government has allowed radical jihadist protests and all the language that goes with that. Kill the Jews, gas the Jews, murder the Jews, all this radical Islamic jihadism. See, saying anti-Semitism is hiding behind the curtain, because anti-Semitism can come in any form. We're talking about the form of radical Islamic jihad. These people, they know how dangerous it is, but they need the people who are Muslims to keep them in their job. That's why they're importing so many internationally, the left woke politicians, to keep them in their jobs. And then what happens is, slowly but surely, the Muslims creep into the politics. They get alongside these people, and the next thing, they've got a job in politics, and then all of a sudden their mate's got a job, etc. And they slowly but surely take over the political realm, and bit by bit the towns and then the states, and then the country. That's the plan. This guy's dodging and weaving. We've seen this on every talk I've done. I don't know how bad this is really going to get, but it's pretty bad so far. They're in denial. They have caused this atrocity. They let them go on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. They let them go at the Opera House. This is where this government threw itself under the bus and left everybody in danger. I say to my mob when they're going out, be careful, because you just don't know who's going to jump out behind you. You've got the societies now full of chemicals through doctors, loading them up with chemicals instead of dealing with the issues with mental resilience and fortitude. Everybody's just fallen onto pills and tablets. Then there's the alcohol. Then there's the domestic drugs that are going on in the communities, and the heavy drugs which are wiping out people and families. The percentage of people in our community that might be sane is low, because there's too many. You add religion to all this, even if they're not on the chemicals. Religion, if you understand the scriptures, be it Christian or, Islamic and the like, religion has a way of ruining the minds of people as well if they get it wrong. But Richard Marles is in denial. Let's see how bad this cognitive dissonance gets.
Yet despite all of those measures that you've implemented, 15 members of the Jewish community were murdered in cold blood.
What occurred?
Okay, so we're stammering and stuttering, we're tripping and falling in our vocabulary because he is an accessory to the fact of bad politics. The way they run the country was a complete and utter failure. And if you look at Senate estimates, if you sit down and go through Senate estimates where the Labor government's confronted about their performance, there is no performance. Everything's on notice. We don't know. It's actually it's worse than what you might see in a kindergarten classroom. It's that bad. It's unbelievable how hopeless these people are that are on massive amounts of money, right? They're on huge amounts of money, and they're not representing us. They're not doing our job. They're failing left, right and centre. The government is putting this country deeper into debt. But no, Mr. Marles, he's just another one sitting on the fence.
On Sunday is utterly appalling. And we need to
See,
be...
what happened on Sunday being utterly appalling, we don't need him to tell us all this. We don't need to know how he sees it and what he feels. We need to know, is he going to put everything that he can in place to shut the Muslims, the radical Islamic Muslim part of their society down, right? It's got to be shut down. It's got to be it's got to be criminal now. Any form of jihad has got to be criminal. Any form of Islamic destructive rhetoric has to be criminal. You've got to understand, these people are invested in these communities. Their job depends on these communities. Now, he might not admit that. He's got to serve a prime minister that's a pro-Palestinian activist by nature, by form. And so they're all just tiptoeing around the tulips. They can't help the people that have been massacred. They're not going to help in the future. Yeah, the laws and the police and all that will outplay their parts, which are normal. That's what they're there for. But now, with all this immigration and everything else, at the levels that it's at, which is criminal, and it's against the Australian public's will, we've been fair. We've let in millions of them. Now that it's out of control and there's no housing for the normal Australians and all the cost of living's gotten out of reach, our children, they've got no chance of owning houses or anything like that. I bought my first house in Australia when I was 18 for $34,000. I'm 60 now, I'm 60 years old, and the same house is worth $1.8 million. How's my children ever going to get a house? One of my daughters has got a couple of houses. For the poor old normal, person that's got the normal job, you can't buy a house in Australia now because of immigration. We've asked them to give it a little bit of a rest, but no, they've forged on. They've brought in the ISIS brides. They tried to sneak in the ISIS brides. They've brought 3,000 unvetted people straight out of Gaza into our communities. They ignored all the pro-Palestinian rhetoric and assaults, verbal assaults, physical threats. This Labor government, and it's not going to happen because the Governor General, she's under the submission of it. She reckons she's not in politics and everything. I'm sorry, but I did a video of her interview, which was a fail, complete fail. They're all in each other's pockets, and unfortunately, it's just too big for them to manage. They don't understand this. Australia, what people don't realise is Australia's only 200 years old. The Middle Eastern enmity that's been going on between Muslims and Jews, because Muslims will chop their own kind up as well if you don't conform, has been going on for millenniums. 4, 5, 6 millenniums. Right. Australia's only 200 years old. It hasn't seen anything yet. It's a work in progress, the Islamic Jihad. It doesn't stop, it doesn't change, it doesn't submit to anybody, it doesn't listen to anybody, it doesn't matter. They'll live in your communities, they'll live in Australia in sufferance, but they'll be covertly practicing their Muslim ways. Okay? The way in which as a theologist, the way in which the Muslim doctrines are formed, right, if fully manifested, has to lead to people being killed, because the whole aim of the thing is to rule and conquer. Right. Now, whether that be by way of peace, micro-incrementally finding its way to the takeover, peace and laws that people have to submit to under the being outnumbered by the Muslims or whatever, it's all on the way to Sharia law being put into place and the Muslim takeover. Now, the patience of the Muslims is incredible, because they don't care if it takes 100 years or 200 years. They will eventually find themselves in a position where they can take over through their Ratha communities, Ratha being militant cells, where they psychologically and religiously train people to carry out the jihad. And jihad's not just shooting people up. Jihad's slowly but surely, micro-incrementally, taking over the civilization in which they live. And Australia's just got no idea.
Looking at it in every sense, the root cause is here is anti-Semitism, and we
The
need
root cause, okay, look, let's get this straight, viewers. Anti-Semitism can manifest in dozens of ways. Okay, to use the broad term anti-Semitism is not dealing with the issue here. Okay, anti-Semitism could mean anything. It means harm to Jews. It means we're going to take out the Jews, but it could mean any form. Where this Labor government continues this political activist underlying fundamental pro-Palestinian Labor government is failing, is that it's not naming Islamic Jihad. There's been a few instances of it, but nothing in a way in which the Muslim communities would really be afraid. It's just not there. They know they can push the boundaries. It doesn't matter if they lose one or two people here and there, excuse me, in these massacres. Doesn't matter, that they'll go down as heroes. Right? This is all part of the narrative of it. The mother of the guy, the young bloke, the bricklayer that was trained to kill on the bridge there, the young bloke, the son, he was a bricklayer. Huh. You think bricklaying's easy? Maybe it was the bricklaying that contributed to him going, screw this. Anyway, she loved it. Great little boy, even after he's killed 15 people and injured 20 plus others. Great little boy, went to work, did this, did that, da. Oh, wonderful little boy. I'm sure Hitler's mother thought he was fantastic. Right, but you've got to get underneath all that and go, well, what at the end of the day was he standing there representing by firing that gun at the Jews? Not anti-Semitism. No, not anti-Semitism. He was representing Islamic Jihad. Right? They don't give a crack about terms like anti-Semitism and, all this sort of stuff. They just want to annihilate the Jews. Right, which is an underlying part of Islam. When you study what happened in Germany under Hitler, you'll see that going after the Jews was just one part of what he was trying to do. He wanted to take over the world. But he come undone by attacking Russia in the middle of winter. They all froze to death, and they were all drugged up. Too much drugs in the trying to get too much out of the soldiers, but they all froze to death. Things could have been severely different had Hitler not have taken on Russia. He stretched himself too far, and he couldn't come back from that. Killing the Jews was just one part of the mission. And if you go right into the history of Hitler, as a young boy, he was dropped by a Jewish girl. He had a Jewish girl as a girlfriend, and she dropped him. And they reckon it was at that point something cracked in his mind towards the Jews. And I know many blokes, their first girlfriend dropped them and that, and they were deeply impacted, never really knew how to handle it or deal with it or understand it. So there was a psychological level that triggered Hitler. Maybe the girl's parents said to her, he's no good, and she got rid of him, and something broke in his mind. But that's what they reckon started it all. So here you've got these well-meaning, probably gifted, charismatic Australian government ministers, but they've all been hamstrung, completely hamstrung by Anthony Albanese, Penny Wong, probably Tony Burke's. Not sure where Tony Burke stands. He's the one that's showing us that it's all about votes, him keeping his job. But Wong and Albanese, they've got a history of pro-Palestinian activism. And it's hamstrung. It's brought the government to the ground. It's exposed the government as being more interested in its political activism than its true purpose, which was to do the best that it could for Australia. Now, it'll give you that rhetoric, but as I said, if you go into Senate estimates and the rest of it, you're going to find a very, very disappointing, in fact, a failing government.
To be stamping it out, but we need to be looking at it from the perspective of intelligence, policing and the like, to learn every lesson that can be learned from this, so that this never happens again. And that is what our agencies will be doing. I know that our security agencies are amongst the best in the world, but as you say, on Sunday night there were 2 people with guns on that bridge shooting at a crowd, and we need to absolutely understand at every level what the processes have been to learn these lessons to ensure that this never happens again. But I'd also make this point, Pete. The terrorism is about seeking to divide Australia. This is
No. Okay, that's a very weak statement. Okay. The first thing, viewers, is the police, the terrorism squad and the intelligence people and all that. They're only going to be limited in the way in which they can stop this. Okay, because it's like a shark attack. They're there, you've got nets out, you've got drum lines out, and you'll stop so many. But every now and then a person will be in the wrong place at the wrong time and they're going to get killed, or a group of people, and they're going to get killed. They're going to get murdered in the name of Allah Akbar, the Islamic Jihadism purpose. To say that they're trying to divide Australia is so far away from what they're actually trying to do. They're actually trying to take over Australia. Right? And there's no point them beating around the bush with this. There's no point them trying to work out how all this works. These people have been going on for millenniums, and I don't say that lightly. This has been going on for over 4 millenniums, if you know anything about Islamic history or Arabic Israeli history. Right? You can go right back to Egypt. The spirit that's been trying to annihilate the Jews for millenniums runs hot in the Muslim religion because it dates back to the Abrahamic offspring. Okay, the Jews came through the son of Abraham and Sarai, came through Abram and Sarai. It was a promise and it was a miracle, and his name was Isaac. But Abraham and Sarai, in their panic, thinking that they weren't going to have a child, Sarai suggested that Abraham sleep with the servant Hagar against Abraham's God's will, and she bore a child by the name of Ishmael. And God said, because you've done this, Ishmael will be a donkey and against you, against Isaac, for the rest of the generations. And this has outworked. It's a spirit. And it's never going to change. You see, this isn't just an idealism. This is a construct. It's a spiritual construct. And unfortunately, you can have the best intelligence. You look at Israel. right? They know how this works. But unfortunately, you can't stop a terrorist jumping on a bus and shooting all the people on the bus, or blowing up the bus, or getting in a car and driving down the footpath and wiping out 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 people. Okay. Then there's the incidental domestic situations where women are beaten and they fight amongst each other and kill each other and all the rest of it. It's just not, you see, it's just not set up right. But it prevails. So let me say again, the Muslim Islamic goal is not to cause division. In fact, they're very peaceful people, right? The Quran does, in its context, ask for them to be peaceful. So they will, under sufferance, live under this government, whatever government's in Australia, and under sufferance. But ultimately, they're not there to divide. They will micro-incrementally, patiently, with perseverance, aim to conquer. And anybody that doesn't get this right is not going to really be a force against what Islam is. You can't expect the government and the police and, again, the terrorism squads and the intelligence people and all the rest of it to know when the next attack's going to be and where it's going to happen, unless there's a dramatic leak, right? Somebody slips and says this and that's going to take place here or there. Because it's a personal, individual, or small collective, cell group, in a spiritual frenzy that will randomly and covertly decide what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. And it could be one night and happen the next day. It could. Right? And you don't know where they're going to pop up. So on the other hand, you know, the only reason why the government's getting the blame, and this is where they shot themselves in the foot, they let all the protests and things happen. Okay, they never stopped it. And now they're in mop-up mode. They've actually failed their duty. They should have stopped all that. They went against the Christian constitutional values and parallelisms that the Constitution requires by way of behaviour in our communities. They let the terrorism go. They let it go. And now they're in severe damage control.
It's a moment where it's really important that Australia comes together and comes together in the embrace of the Jewish community.
This is where, again, they're failing, because Australia was together, is together, always has been together. I've got a deep respect for the Australian Jewish community. As a matter of fact, I was given, as a bricklaying contractor about 15 years ago, I was given the front boundary fence job at the Bellevue Hill Israeli school. And this is where my eyes were open. They were building a concrete wall up the right-hand, facing the school, up the right-hand side of the school. And there was security at the school, armed security. And I had to ask, I thought, hang on a sec, I don't understand what's happening here. The concrete wall was an anti-terrorism bomb wall, right, to stop bombs going off. If somebody parked a car beside the school and let off a bomb, nobody's going to get hurt in the school. The security guards were there to stop any attempt of this happening. And I'm standing there as a simple Australian that's grown up here and in that area and whatnot, going, I never knew any of this was even taking place. They had to spend, I don't know, it was tens of thousands, I think it was over $100,000 on the concrete bomb wall, just to keep any chance of a threat down, because some of these bombs will just blow everything around it to bits. Absolutely to bits. But I saw it with my own two eyes, and this is why.
Comes together to see our nation come through this moment, and as a government we will be doing everything in our power to stamp out anti-Semitism and to ensure that this never happens again.
And again, he's just generalised anti-Semitism. They're not getting to the point, which is fundamental Islamic jihadism. And this is where they're just not going to make it. They're just not going to have the integrity to get through this. I'll stop this video here. We're going with part 2 shortly.